Hey there, Joey Sturgis here from joeysturgistones.com, and in this video, I want to take a look at how you should be panning your tracks when mixing. I want to show you what I've discovered is the best way to pan everything in your mix, and I learned this by recording hundreds of albums and testing all the various ways to do it. However, it's very important to note that when it comes to working with audio, especially panning, there's really not going to be one right way to do this kind of stuff. It's more about what would the listener expect, or what would be appropriate for what you think the listener should hear in a given situation. And for those of us who are very artistic in how we approach and create music, sometimes what we want to do is the unexpected and pan things in a way that the audience would not expect. This is all about being creative and having fun. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we avoid the mistakes that, might make something sound bad or unpleasant to listen to. There's a long history of artists trying to all kinds of different panning techniques and methods back when stereo was invented, and engineers had two speakers to play with for the first time. If you go back far enough, you can actually hear recordings where drums and bass were on one speaker and instruments and vocals were on another speaker. Now, we would not expect to hear stuff panned in that way in today's modern production era, but it's important to note that you can use panning as a very creative tool when it comes to audio production. And before I keep going here with this tutorial, I want to say that you must always take these guides as inspirational ideas, not rules. It's music. You can do whatever you want. You're totally free. I'm just sharing with you what I've learned through my 15 years of audio production and why I think it's important to know this stuff. So without further ado, let's jump into the DAW and get to panning. All right, so what I got here is a country rock song, and you can actually get this track if you would like. By purchasing Buzzclue Billy Decker, the bundle. This track comes with that. It's a multi-track. It was recorded in Nashville with top engineers and top performers. Sounds really cool. It's got a lot of different elements. We've got some fiddle, we've got some acoustic guitar, electric guitar, got bass, piano. It's really a nice little tune and really great for practicing and mixing on. So we're going to be talking about panning and whatnot, but first, let me show you what's going on with the song as it is right now. Nice jamming little track. So let's talk about panning here. In a song like this, especially in a band like this, it's very important to get the panning right because you're really kind of dealing with a lot of different instruments. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. And if you take a look at this, you can actually see how the instruments are playing all at the same time pretty much throughout the entire song. There's really not anyone taking a break at any time. So you've got moments where you need to turn the volume down, but you also have moments where you need more than one thing to be the focus, and that's what we're going to use. That's what we're going to use panning for. So, for example, we have this fiddle that's rhythm sawing. Let's hear that. And while that's going on, we have another fiddle that's playing a solo. So if we were to have both of these in the center here, which I'll do that real quick, we're going to lose clarity on which instrument is doing what. It's going to start to sound like one instrument. So you can see how it's kind of unfocused. It's a little bit hard to tell what's going on. Now, if I take this rhythm and let's say I push that a little bit to the right, and I take the solo and let's say I push that a little bit to the left. Now let's take a listen. all of a sudden it's really clear, and I can even turn up that rhythms fiddle and still hear the difference between the two fiddles, and I can still hear what each one is doing. So let's bring in another instrument. I'm going to bring in the acoustic guitar, and let's just take a listen to what that's doing here. Now this is interesting because this is one instrument, but it's mic'd with two different microphones. So one microphone is actually on the left, and one of the other microphones is on the right. So you have two different capture sources capturing one instrument and conveying the difference there through the different speakers. So if I put this to the left, we're going to only hear one of the microphones. And if I put this on the right, we're going to hear the other microphone. And when we pan it in the center, we're hearing both microphones at the same time, one microphone in the left speaker and the other microphone in the right speaker. Now what's cool about this is you can actually use it almost like kind of like an EQ in a way. When we want the acoustic guitar to get a little darker, we can pan it to the right, and you can hear how that microphone's a little darker than the other one. If we want the acoustic to be a little brighter, we can pan it to the left. So this is a little bit of a different technique that you're going to be dealing with when it comes to panning. And you can also, use various different tools to make these two signals come out of the same speaker. So if you really wanted to control that, you could change the routing, for example. You could use some kind of spatial plugin here. So we could use, let's just try the mono to stereo. So with this, we're going to be able to change the width a little bit. So you can see how that adds a little bit of an extra control to the signal. So if we wanted to, let's say perhaps in the verse, keep the guitar a little bit more mono and pan that towards the left, we could do that. So for example, we take the width all the way down, pan it to the left. And then in the chorus, we can open up that width and put it back into the center. And that gives us a little bit of a wider sound with that plugin or that source. The next thing is we have the bass, and typically with a low-end instrument, what you want to do is you want to make sure the frequencies that are below a certain point, you kind of want those to remain mono, because bass starts to get a little bit wonky when it's stereo below a certain point. Basically because the speakers are moving so much, they're pushing so much air. If you've got any kind of stereo action going on below those frequencies, you've got those speakers are conflicting with each other. They're moving air at different paces, at different speeds and things like that, and it just doesn't sound great. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll double check to make sure that my bass is 100% absolutely mono. And if I want my bass to have a little bit of width, like let's say I've got a chorus or a reverb or something, I'll make sure that just the low end is mono, and anything that's in the mid range or the high end has got some stereo action going on. So let's see what the bass sounds like. Sounds perfectly mono. Let's check on here. So this is actually a great tool to check if your signal's in mono. It'll go just like that if it's in mono. So that's showing width. That's showing mono. So with bass, we're good there. If we were going to use some reverb and stuff, we would need to do some clever routing to be able to keep that low end mono. So typically what I would do is I would create a mono group. So let's do a group channel. Let's call it mono. So that's going to be mono low end, and we're going to go ahead and send this there. Turn that on. We're going to also create another group, and this is going to be called, this is going to be stereo, and this is going to be called bass verb. We're going to send our bass there as well. And so on the bass verb, what we will do is we will take out any low end. So we'll have a high pass at around 400. And then on the low end, we will have a low pass at 400. So that all we hear with this one, let's go ahead and make sure this is turned all the way down, and these we want to be pre-fader. So now we've got the signal separated by frequencies. So this one is only the low frequencies, this one's only the mid and high frequencies. So with the low one, we can just make sure that's mono. I'm pretty sure it is, but let's just double check. Yes. So the low end's mono, that's good. And then we could put a little bit of reverb on here if we wanted to. Just makes it a little bit livelier. And so now you'll hear mono low end, stereo top end together. And then in the mix. Another thing I would probably do too is just create a stereo group and call it bass together. And then let's just make sure that these are routed there. Whoops. There we go. That way we can control the bass is 1. Cool. So one last big tip I want to give you guys when it comes to panning. With drums, you want to make sure you've got your overheads completely separate. Spaced pair is a great way to get a big wide sound. So you have one microphone on the left side of the kit, another microphone on the right. With your hi-hats, you probably want to pan that a little bit more to the left if you're doing from drummer's perspective, or to the right if you're doing audience perspective. So you can see I've got a drummer's perspective here. If we pair that up with the overhead, sounds nice. But the other tip I want to give you here is to know about your settings in your DAW, because this is really important. So if I go to the project setup, you'll notice that there's a setting in here and it's called the stereo pan law. And there's a couple different options in here. We've got -6, -4.5, -3, 0, and equal power. I prefer equal power, but you really want to know what you're dealing with here, because this changes things drastically. So if I set this to -6, let's take a look at what's going to happen here. I'm going to start with something that's strictly mono, and that's going to be the kick drum. So on the kick drum, if I solo this, let's take a look at what we're hitting here on the meter. So we're hitting -6 there. I want to change this pan law back to equal power, and watch what happens on this meter. Did you notice? It got louder. So what's happening here is the DAW is trying to compensate for the fact that when you pan something towards the left, it's actually decreasing in volume because it's no longer coming out of both speakers at the same volume. It's coming out of the left speaker at a higher volume than the right speaker. And so that volume difference is controlled by the pan law. So there's different schools of thought here. I prefer equal power. It sounds natural to me. The idea is that with equal power, no matter where you're panning your instrument, it tries to maintain the right amount of volume to sound as if it's not getting quieter or louder. It's just moving from one speaker to the other. However, you've got these other options here to play with. So definitely experiment with that and pay attention to how you have it set from song to song. And it matters a lot when you're dealing with mono versus stereo tracks in your DAW. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. If you got another audio buddy who would love this content, please share it. Hit the bell to get notified when we upload new videos, and don't forget to check the link in the description below before you go. You're the best. We'll see you soon.